Welcome to Camera Shake Podcast, episode 83. It's that time of the week, Thursday morning. As always, brand new episode. Here we are. Now, Nick, it's been an eventful week.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I think I had 7 or 8 minutes to myself the other day. That was fun.
Yeah, but you did manage to get yourself a new toy, though.
Yeah, I did. See, I don't actually know where the line is going to be because we're in different places today. So I'll put it right in front of my face.
Also, of course, for those of you listening to the audio version of this podcast, you have no idea what he's holding up right now.
So I think that's still on the screen. Should be just about. Oh, if it's not, I apologise. So I upgraded my gimbal from the Ronin S to what they're calling RS2. Even though they do write Ronin S2 on there as well. But apparently in the blurbage, they're just calling it the RS2. And
so what was the thinking behind upgrading a gimbal? Because your gimbal is actually pretty awesome.
The Ronin S was fantastic. Loved that thing. There's one primary reason. Well, there's two, but one is more important than the other by a long way. So one reason was the weight of the Ronin S is quite heavy. When you got it fully loaded. And I knew the Ronin S2 was going to be significantly lighter. But the primary reason is that my C70 doesn't fit on the Ronin S. I can't get it to fit. You might be able to do it with a load of plates and whatnot. I'm not doing that because I'm moving between gimbal to something else on a particular shoot anyway. So you can't fit the C70 on it. So I always had to use my R6 on it, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but I'd like the option to use the C70. It does fit on the RS2. Okay. And so that was the biggest reason for moving. Now, there are a whole host of other pluses that come with it, and not namely the weight. I mean, this thing, in comparison, is just feather light. So it's all carbon fiber, other than the battery. The battery's smaller, but lasts just as long. One of my favourite little features of it is that you can lock the motors now, with a little switch at either side. Absolutely superb. Why it wasn't on the first one, I have absolutely no idea. Other upgrades with it are that it's shorter as well, which has reduced the weight too, which is great. And you're probably not going to be able to see this, but go check out the DJI website and have a look at it. The plate that goes on the gimbal is being redesigned so that you've got a little wheel that will scroll it forwards and back for kind of fine tuning. So there's grooves on the bottom, there's teeth on the bottom. And then on top of the plate is a fixed smaller plate so that you can fix the smaller plate to your camera, the small plate to the bigger plate that's on the gimbal, and then the big plate to the gimbal itself. So that means that you can kind of quick release the camera without messing up any of the balancing. So if you want to do, a quick handheld shot, you can take the small plate off, do that, and stick it back on. No balancing lost.
Right, that's a massive advantage.
That's
actually
huge, really.
Yeah.
I initially thought that the big plate was the same size as my satchel head plate, and it kind of is, but it also kind of isn't. So there's a big enough difference that the satchel plate won't fit on the gimbal, and that the gimbal plate does fit on the satchel head, but is loose when it's tightened. Real shame, but I just need to work out a way to kind of move between them with a degree of ease, and there'll be a way. Yeah. And then the other kind of bit, so I got the combo version. You can get the gimbal on its own, and then there's a combo, which has it comes with a few accessories. Basically, it's got the follow focus with it. It's got something called Raven Eye. And Raven Eye simply will transmit. It will take an HDMI out from your camera, and it will transmit over its own Wi-Fi.
Wait a minute, Raven Eye. I'm pretty sure it's a rock band, though.
Is what?
I'm pretty sure it's a rock band.
Yeah, it could be. So it transmits it to your phone or tablet, and you can control the camera from that as well. So you could actually go and put it static somewhere. If you've got it on a jib or something like that, you can use your phone or tablet to actually control the camera, control the gimbal, from there, which is great. It's got 3D tracking built in as well. So if I, on my phone, select you as a subject, and I just start walking, even if I just walk straight and not move the gimbal will move and keep you where you were in the frame. that's a nice little touch. I don't know how often I'm actually going to use it, but I probably will. But you do need Raven Eye to do that. So you'd need a combo version.
So the whole thing, basically, in a nutshell, it's bigger, it's better, and it's also a lot lighter.
Yeah, let's go with that. That sums it up pretty well. Oh, and it's got an actual LCD display on the back, so you don't have to use the app anymore if you don't want to.
Oh, really? Okay.
Winner right there, because that was the biggest pain in the ass, was having to get your app out. Go get my little phone out while I'm on the No, it doesn't look good.
You know what I want to know, though, is I want to know, I mean, obviously, we haven't had a chance to really road test the thing just yet, but I want to know whether it still gets the shakes.
I've forgotten about the shakes. Yeah, so what Kay means by that is my Ronin S, I don't know whether it's just mine or whether they all do it or what. If one of the motors was marginally out, even if you've balance tested it, even if you've fine-tuned it, all of that kind of stuff, if it was too, I'm going to use the wrong phrase here, but if it's kind of got too much torque or too tight or whatever that wording would be, it would just out of nowhere just start going, and you'd basically have to turn the gimbal off and turn it back on.
Yeah, it's like a gimbal epileptic fit type of thing.
Yeah, very much like that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to do that. I've turned it on 3 or 4 times now just to try a couple of things out, see how well it balances, all of that kind of stuff, and it's not happened. But we will see, because I'm going to use it on the first shoot tomorrow.
Yeah, I was going to say we've got a couple of projects coming up, so we'll find out very quickly whether it still does it or not.
Honestly, as soon as you pick this up, you're going to go, "Wow!"
Right?
Yeah, that's the reaction.
I mean, that's the weight is really something to consider, because you got to think, you've got the weight of the gimbal, the weight of the camera body, and then the weight of the lens plus any other accessories you've got attached to the thing. So, and then you're holding it, at least for some of the time, you're holding it with one arm. And I always found that with the old fly cams, and I still actually have a fly cam upstairs. Do you remember that setup? So you basically have, it's like, whatchamacallit? It's like a stick basically that's balanced. Mm-hmm. So, so you've got the camera sitting on top, and then you've got a counterweight,
actual weight,
at the bottom of it. And you basically, the way it works is, it's self-balancing, but you hold it with one arm, and then you maneuver the top with the other arm. Mm-hmm. So you've got all the weight on one arm. And the way the counterbalance or the counterweight works is it basically matches the exact weight of the body plus the lens.
Yeah.
So if you've got a big lens and a relatively big heavy body on the top, then you've got the same weight again, plus the weight of the overall contraption. So it's some considerable weight on your arm. And I remember doing a whole day shoot with this thing one time, and my shoulder was hurting. I think I probably tore back muscle doing that. But yeah, that was killer. No, it was terrible.
I've used those before. They're not in short bursts. They're actually all right to use. But I always hated setting them up. Couldn't stand it.
Yeah, and exactly. And there are pros and cons to both systems, actually, depending on what kind of shot you're doing and the way you control it. There are some pros to the fly cam, and there's some serious negative aspects to it. I find, especially when you're when the subject's moving and you're following and you're moving around the subject, I find it's probably easier, but it's maybe just my lack of experience with actually gimbals, actually. But I've always found it much easier to actually just use my right hand, to twist and turn. And then I could keep it in the center of the screen as I'm moving around it. I've always found it easier to do than using switches and electronic motors, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, but that was pretty much the only advantage.
Yeah, I remember doing those kind of moves with that, those glide cams. It's getting to know the gimbal more than anything. Yeah. It just works in a different manner to a glide cam, right?
And the only other thing, actually, I just remember that was pretty straightforward and super easy was you could just flip it over and do a really close to the ground, heel follow shot, for instance.
That's true.
And that was just simple. You just flip the thing over, you're done, and the whole thing works. So that was that was an advantage, obviously.
That's true. I mean, you can do that with the gimbals as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no problem. The other thing this has got, and I don't know if it comes with the how it actually attaches and all of that, is that you can reattach kind of the handle, if you like, to the back so that you can hold it kind of in this position if you're doing those kind of movements rather than having to get down even lower, which is quite a nice little touch. I've not looked at that though. I just saw it online before I decided. Obviously, I did my research on this long before purchasing, and I've been looking. Well, as you know, I've been looking at getting this since it came out, and decided to. This week was the time for whatever reason, but I did. Got bored. Cool. No, it needed to be done, and I'm really now I've got it in my hands. I'm very, very pleased. But tomorrow we'll tell.
Isn't Black Friday coming up at the end of the week? Is it the end of this week or next week? I can't remember.
It's this Friday.
Yeah, this Friday. So would it be really annoying if you, now that you've bought this, a few days before Black Friday,
already looked
you could
at
have
that.
made a massive size? Oh, you've already looked at that. Okay.
First thing I looked at, and 90% of shops do a Black Friday week. They don't just wait till the day; they just do it all week. And this wasn't on it.
Apparently, there's a severe lack of gadgets available.
Is that right?
This Black Friday. Yeah. So the retailer organization or association has been warning that there may be a problem because of like supply chain issues and this and then the other. So. This could be interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, I know on camera that's probably just looked like I've put the gimbal into you.
Yeah, I can just grab it from the other side.
Yeah, exactly. So just to give you so I just was looking this up. I just wanted to give you a quick idea of the weight, because the weight is the massive selling point here. Yeah. The original gimbal, the Ronin RS, was £4 with the gimbal and the grip, right?
Yeah.
This gimbal is £2.9 with gimbal and grip.
Right.
So it's significant. It really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Awesome.
That was quick maths because they separated it out for some reason. Very annoying. But it handles 4.5 kilograms, whereas the first one did 3.5.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the load capacity is, that's another important factor, obviously. So last week, we talked a lot about tech. So we thought for this week, we're going to change things around a little bit because I thought it'd be interesting to talk about some of the photographs that we've taken and some of the photographs that we've come across that really sort of, created a lasting impression for us. One of the things, before we go into our own shots, I came up against I found some imagery of the Hungarian toy photographer Benedek Lampert, and what he was doing. You love this, actually. He is taking toy photographs of Star Wars Lego.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but they look amazing. I mean, they basically look like movie posters, right? But made with Star Wars Lego. And so he tagged Lego in one of his Instagram posts, and then out of the blue, he got an email from the company saying, would you shoot this campaign for us?
Wow.
Which, is amazing. So now that's what's happening. He's shooting a campaign called This Is How We Play, official Lego campaign. But it's really interesting the way he does it because he spends about 2 days on one shot.
Okay. Wow.
So so the first day is all about building and, modeling and basically putting stuff together and creating the scene and everything, doing some test shots. Playing around with some post-processing techniques and stuff like that. And then on the second day, when he's got everything lined up and everything in place, that's when he actually goes for the actual shot.
That's incredible.
So it's really interesting. I'm sort of semi-fascinated by toy photography anyway.
Mm.
There was, if you remember, like during lockdown, there were a number of people who did superhero, like action figure type shots and stuff like that. But this one really takes it to a new level. Plus, I happen to like Star Wars just a bit.
Do you?
Yeah.
Really?
Did you know? Did you not know? Where's my lightsaber?
Says the man with a piece of Lego, Star Wars Lego, right behind his head.
Oh yeah, that's right. That is right. Yeah. So that was really interesting. I mean, check him out. His name is Benedek Lampard. And we'll put a link in the description.
So did he just start doing this for fun? And then Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I think I read he got into like he's been doing it for like 4 or 5 years, and obviously it looks like he's a big Star Wars fan, and he also has been playing with Lego or building Lego ever since he was a kid, sort of a thing. So it was like a natural thing to do. I spent a lot of time in the Lego store, weirdly, because my daughter really loves Lego. And so, I look at these horrendously expensive Lego models, by the way. I mean, some of them like, really like 800 quid, like the Millennium Falcon and stuff like that. It's incredible. Although, that being said, some of those models look phenomenal.
How many of those are you going to buy?
Actually, well, funnily enough, we've actually been thinking, my wife and I, because we both like Friends, and they said they do the set of Friends in Lego.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. But, there's cool stuff. I mean, there's, the Ghostbusters mobile. In fact, they do the Ghostbusters headquarters as well. And stuff like that. So, so interestingly enough, the new Ghostbusters movie has literally just landed in cinemas. I don't know I think I may have told you this, but basically they shot this in a place in Canada called Drumheller, which is my wife's birthplace. But it stands in for a town in the Midwest. Yep. But I'm guessing, for like tax reasons or whatever, they tend to shoot a lot in and around Calgary, basically. And so this town is not what it seems.
Cool, man. I'll get and watch that.
Yeah, and I recognize this. I saw a trailer. The first trailer they came out with for this movie, which is like probably 6 months ago or something. Yeah, it's no, sorry. It was a split second. There was a wide shot of the town, and there's a water tower, and they shot it from the back. On the front of it, it has Drumheller written in like massive letters, obviously, but it was shot from the back. And I look at it and I'm like, wait a second. So I had to rewind and freeze frame that particular frame. And it's like, yeah, that's Drumheller. You recognize the whole town, the main street. Like there's a dinosaur museum, which is literally just out of shot. Where so it was fun.
Ah, cool, man.
It's funny how the brain works. Like sometimes you see something for literally just a fraction of a second,
enough,
and you just go, wait a second, I recognize that, So, interesting thing. Anyway, for all those Ghostbusters fans out there.
Are there any left?
Yeah, I'm going to go and see it, for sure.
Yeah, I probably will.
100%. Cool. Now, we're going to start with your shot, Nick. Just for those of you obviously watching the YouTube version, you will be able to see that image flying in now. If you are listening to the audio version, be reminded that you can actually see the full beauty of these photographically artistic endeavors on YouTube. There you go. Anyway, Nick, we'll start with you.
And ironically, for this particular photo, not in Technicolor.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even in Technicolor. It's black and white. Damn it.
Yeah, so this is a shot I did a while ago during a lockdown of the 50 that we had. I forget how many we had now, but yeah. And I did it to A, keep myself busy, B, to just try out something a style that I'd not really done before. So this particular image is basically replicating a photo that I saw from Studio Hardcore in Paris, who do kind of celebrity headshots, effectively.
Nice.
And that kind of thing. And they're all in 1920s kind of style, that era. And so it's that you can imagine. Actually, I'm not even going to describe it any more than that. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you need to go over to YouTube to go check out the photo itself. There we go. Another little plug for that.
It's a really classic look. I mean, it immediately reminded me of 1920s Hollywood headshots of some of the great actors. In fact, I remember my dad used to have a photo book.
Oh, right.
Which, in fact, I need to dig out because I'm pretty sure my mom still has it in Germany. Mm-hmm. Which was basically, I just cannot remember the name of it, but it was a particular photographer who used to photograph all of these stars and starlets.
Yeah,
back in the 1920s and 30s, and immediately when I saw that picture, that was like, okay, that looks exactly like that style.
See, so this is actually, so the photo that I saw was one of Keanu Reeves in particular. For whatever reason, it's just one that I came across, and he was born in the 20s, right?
Well, it's Keanu Reeves, one of the greatest 1920s screen actors.
Yeah, of course. He was a silent artist.
We'll start off the silver screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Keanu, if you are listening, please get in touch.
Hi, Keanu. And so I've seen some videos of the typical kind of lighting setup. You can imagine how high end it is right there, because this is all they do. And, I'm doing this with two speed lights, and they do it with 20.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
That kind of setup. It varies, obviously, but they're very, very, very particular in the way they do it. So I basically took the image and took a couple of speed lights and thought, how am I going to replicate this with what I've already got without having to go get anything new? So looking at it, I decided that I would have a speed light. We'll get onto kind of the posing and the challenges behind that in a second. But I put a snoot on the one speed light right in front of me, and for those of you who don't know what snoot is, it attaches to the front of your speed light, and we now have a cat about to cross into the frame. Excuse me, Indy, down you get. Yeah, you can meow all you want. Down you get. Thank you. You can attach it to the front of your speed light. It might just go, stretch over the top. It might. The one I have is magnetic, so you put you flex a piece of rubber over the speed light. It's got magnets inside it, and then Snoop will attach to it that way, and you can get other bits and add-ons that can go onto that, like gels. And you can adjust the length of the snoot, which will change how the light comes out of it. And at the end of the snoot is, a round hole generally, which is, no more than, an inch across, if that. So very small. So it's a very directional light. So I put that on the front and, started taking some shots with that and my face, looking in the general kind of direction that I wanted to look, and it started to give me what I wanted. And so then it was a matter of adjusting the height, adjusting the angle, adjusting where I'm looking, and then adjusting where my eyes were looking to get it to fill my face and not the rest of my body and my hair and so on. And so I didn't have enough light stands in the house at the time, so I ended up putting that speed light on, I think it was a piano stool, and then a chair on top of that, and then a box as well to get it to the exact height I wanted. So, using everything I had to hand, it was it was surprisingly stable and worked quite well.
Was that really easier and quicker than like running down to the garage and getting another stand out?
It was for me at the time, because I pretty much had nothing on in the bottom half of my body. So
okay, I see. One of those pictures, I see. Yeah.
Didn't fancy that.
Right.
But that's what I ended up doing, and it just worked. I actually, if I do remember correctly now, I think I had to just raise my ass off the seat ever so slightly to get it perfect. I can't. I'm pretty sure I did for one of those shots. Anyway, so once I'd got that positioning, I then so I had my laptop tethered, and I had a remote in my hand to take the shot and to take test shots. And so, but I had to. I tried a few, and basically I could never get my head or my eyes back to the same position after reviewing the shot. And so what I did was put the laptop directly in my eye line of where I knew it was about right, took a shot, didn't move my head or my eyes at all if I could, and then looked at the shot and then adjusted myself ever so slightly and took another shot until I felt right. And wherever my eyes were looking, I took note of what I was looking at, dead on center. I think it was a specific leaf on a plant that I could see at the time.
Right.
I thought, right, that's exactly where I need to look to get the gaze that I wanted. Anyway, so that was kind of what I ended up doing. So we had this. I had this one speed light in front of me with the snoot on the front, and then I had a second speed light. You can see there's a bit of a hair light going on. It's almost a bit more than a hair light. It's more of an accent hair light. It's not just separating me from the background. It's actually adding quite a bit of light to my hair there. And that's up on a stand. Again, another speed light. Didn't have a second snoot. So, but I needed some directional light, and zooming in on the speed light just wasn't giving me enough. It wasn't focusing the light enough. So I ended up cutting out a piece of cardboard or something similar and poking a decent sized hole in it and putting that over the front to take some shots. Turns out it was actually on quite high power, so I don't recommend taking too many shots because it did start to burn the back ever so slightly. I could smell it before I saw it. Let's put it that way. But it worked. It did the trick.
It's the joys of speedlights.
Yeah, quite. To be honest, that was relatively easy to position. I think I only moved it once after my initial positioning, and it was just about right.
Yeah.
I think I'm not sure whether I got lucky or the spread was quite wide. It was wider anyway, and it just kind of worked. A lot of it was actually spreading behind my back, and you can't see it. So you only get on kind of the edge of it, so it's feathered quite nicely.
Yeah,
which made it quite simple in that respect. And then I believe I had a reflector actually up over to the opposite side of that hair light, just pushing a little bit back in, but still keeping the other side of my face, nice and contrasty and dark there. Yeah. Then I guess the only other thing to really mention at this stage is that was the clothing. I went with what Keanu Reeves was wearing in that particular photo to kind of keep it so it's in keeping. And that was kind of a suit jacket with a t-shirt underneath, which, not something I would choose personally, but there you go. I'm not cool enough to wear a suit jacket and a t-shirt.
Did you try some John Wick style moves while you were doing that?
I haven't got the beard for that.
Dang.
Yeah, I think I'd need to chop off your hair and attach it to my face to be like that. A bit more John Wick. Yeah, so that was kind of it, and I was quite intent on making sure that I got the look as close as possible in camera, knowing that I was going to turn it black and white. Oh, that reminds me. So there's one thing to probably mention about the background. I was actually I was quite close to the background. Probably maybe 3 foot from the background, give or take.
Okay,
in that kind of ballpark. But the background I'm using is a fabric background, and you might think it's a black background or a grey background or something like that once turned to black and white, but it's not. It was a red one that I actually used for that, and it just once it turned black and white, it was just right. It felt good to me, so I kept it. I'm sure a black would have done just as well, but that's what I went with. That's what I went with in the end.
I mean, for those of you who are familiar with the inverse square law as far as lighting is concerned, you can create a black background out of anything, even a white background. You can make that black depending on how far away from the background you sit, obviously, and where you position the light. So when you did the black and white conversion, because you said it was a red background, so did you decide from the outset that this was going to be a black and white shot, or was that something in the editing that you didn't?
I knew from the start this would be black and white for sure. Right. So what I actually did before I even sat down was take some shots of the couple of backgrounds to see what it would produce when I converted it to black and white, to make sure I kind of got the look I was going for, knowing give or take where I was going to place those lights, just because I didn't want to have to go and mess around changing the background afterwards. So I had a little test first. And that's why I just stuck with the red one before I then sat down and took a load of proper test shots.
I mean, I mentioned the inverse square law earlier. I mean, one of the issues that you can run into, especially when you're taking photos at home, in a home, like in your living room or in your bedroom or something like that, is of course space. In order to really make use of the inverse square law to this extent, you have to have a little bit of space between you and the background. And so, if you're in a really tiny room, especially in this country, I don't know why are rooms so tiny in this country. I know. Then of course you're going to have to counteract that a little bit. And then of course, the darker your background, the easier that'll be, basically. Or of course, if you're working with constant light, for example, you have a whole different issue. Especially if you're in a place where you can't block out sunlight or daylight entirely, then you're gonna have to sometimes work around these things. So, the rules of the inverse square law, albeit the laws of physics, they don't necessarily always apply in the same way depending on what situation you're in. I think that's really important to remember. And I always say this, when you're, if you're using a particular space at home, for example, to take pictures, really familiarize yourself with the space. So how light reacts in the space that you're in. So, a good example for that is my home studio, that I've got here, which you can't see, but it's literally just over there. It's all painted white. It's a fairly small room, fairly small camera room, and it's all painted white. It's got a high ceiling on one side, but nevertheless, it's all white. So for me, my issue isn't necessarily, reflectors. My issue is flags. I need to block light out in order to avoid reflections, because light bounces off of the wall and off the ceiling and everything else. So that's not, again, you don't have the same issues if you're in a different space, like maybe the walls and the ceilings are painted black, or when you're in a space that's considerably larger than that, where none of that really matters. But in my particular space, I know how light reacts. I know what happens when I use a particular, softbox of a particular size. I sort of, I've shot in this space so many times that I now gotten the hang of it. And the same thing is, by the way, is true with backgrounds. So one thing I wanted to ask you as well about the black and white conversion. How did you convert the whole image from color into black and white?
So I'm pretty confident. If it's still, I will go away and check this if to be 100% so, and I'll flash it up if this is incorrect. I'm pretty confident that I just used went down the black and white side on it within Lightroom itself, rather than going to convert it anywhere else. I don't always do that, but I'm pretty confident I did for this one. I will also actually do have a couple of black and white LUTs, which I do use for conversion too, which just look just slightly different, ever so slightly different. But I'm pretty confident that just in this particular instance, that's how I ended up going to how I converted it. I guess, well, while we're talking about that, then I guess the only thing there's not much actually to mention from an editing perspective. Didn't do a lot. I was that intent on trying to get it as close as possible in camera. So the only things I've really done on this particular image was I've darkened done some gradient filters on and darkened the edges of the image a little bit. Just pulled that in. That's pretty much all that happened there. I don't think I even touched the general exposure of the image. I've pulled down the highlights a bit, and I've raised the shadows ever so slightly. Again, not a huge amount. It's supposed to be contrasty. It's supposed to be dark. It's supposed to be moody. Apart from that, right on your face. The only, I did some frequency separation to smooth out the skin of my face a little selective sharpening on the eyes, probably on some of the nose area, some of the hair, and some of the beard. It's probably where I've done that. And actually thinking about it now, I actually think that I did a radial filter on my right shoulder, so the shoulder that's back, and just cranked the exposure a smidge just to bring out the light that was hitting it a little bit more, because I don't think it was hitting it quite as much as I wanted. Now I think about it, I'm pretty confident I did that. Other than that, I don't believe I did anything else to it. That was it. Oh, I think I did. A little bit of dodging and burning on some bits before I brought in the shadows at the brought in the darkness to the edges, and that's mostly on the suit. There's some dodging and burning done in my hair where it isn't in darkness. I don't believe I did any on my face in the end, and there might be a little bit more just on the beard and just in the under the chin there. That was really it. So the way I go about dodging and burning there is not. I do general stuff in Lightroom, but I push it out to Photoshop to do the selective sharpening. I push it out to do dodging and burning as well with curves set to multiply or to screen, which looks ridiculous when it's at full opacity. But then once I've got it where I want it to be, I then bring the opacities down to 0 and then just gradually bring them up a touch until it sits right and it's nice and subtle and does what you want dodging and burning to do. But yeah, that was about it. I'll come up with something else in a minute I've forgotten about, but that was it. So I know we've talked about it for a while, but the reality is there wasn't much editing that really went into this. It was very, very little.
Here's a key question, though. Is that on your dating profile?
I don't know. Would you want it on there?
Well, I know from a reliable source, because I actually have made this mistake in a long time ago, in the days of online dating, when I was available, as they say. I actually had a bunch of black and white photos on my dating profile because I thought, they're really arty and, creative and all the rest of it.
Oh, no, these are creative.
Well, and then, then I met my wife, blah, blah, blah. We're married now. And then, of course, at some point we had this sort of conversation. I was like, what did you think of the photos of my dating profile? And she goes like, they were rubbish. If your profile hadn't been so interesting, and and if it hadn't been for the fact that we really connected once we started talking to each other, I don't think you would have stood a chance. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow.
So I've been told from a very reliable source that possibly black and white self-portraits on your dating profile might not necessarily be the best choice.
I can quite believe that. It will look slightly pretentious.
I think that's probably right. Yeah, I mean,
Oh yeah.
My dating profile was it's maybe a little too arty for the average human. But then again, I'm of the age where, like when I was, a freshman, you'd go to a bar and meet somebody. I mean, I had no idea, how this whole online dating thing even works. I mean, I had no idea,
You couldn't sound older right now.
Yeah, but as always.
I
remember back in the day, in the good old times. But it's whatever. You get to try it,
Yeah.
That's it. So, it obviously worked out because I am happily married. So there you go, ta-da. Shebang.
But we also know that she's not listening.
Well, I mean, yes, there's that. But apparently my youngest daughter listened to one of our episodes for the first time ever.
She will.
Last week. My youngest daughter listened to, Cara listened to one of our episodes the other day.
Oh, she did?
For the first time ever. Yeah, she did, yeah. And
did you
she
force
actually
her?
quite liked it. Yeah. It was the Joe Edelman episode she listened to.
Excellent. Good choice.
So, yeah. And it wasn't at all boring, apparently. So,
Thank you, Cara.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to go on my tombstone. Here lies Kersten Lutz. Not at all boring. If I can manage that, then
nice.
That'll be it. All right, cool.
Right, man. Let's have a little look-see at your image.
Sure. Okay. So, the image I picked out is actually a shot that I created only like a couple of weeks ago. So, and it's actually meant for a jazz album cover. So I shot an album cover for this jazz trio.
Nice.
We shot front and back, and
jazz club.
Nice. So yeah, and the album title is "Hold My Beer." That's the album title, and it's basically it's an album of jazz blues standards.
What's the band called?
The band's called the Mark Herdman Trio. Mm-hmm. So it's it's cool. A relatively new band. They're really good though. I actually had the opportunity to listen to the whole album. Whilst we were doing the shoot, and I have to say it's pretty kicking. If you're into jazz, I mean, this is I highly recommend it. It's not out yet. It'll be out soon, before Christmas, I guess. But cool. Definitely worth checking out. The guitarist, incidentally, on it is excellent.
Really?
Yeah, and I rarely say that about the recording of the guitar. That's not me.
Nice.
No, it's really, I mean, it's killer, man. It really is. You like it, it's killer album. It's just trio, It's drums, keys, guitar. That's it.
Perfect. Love that.
So yeah, we shot this album cover. It's actually the creative brief was actually different originally, and we had a venue and we had sort of small crew and everything else. But for one reason or another, it didn't work out. So we had to come up with a different idea with that. So this was actually shot in my studio here. It's a relatively straightforward shot, although it was interesting, and I quite like, as I like the whole, building sets and fiddling around with stuff kind of thing, the making process of it. And so what's happening here is one, I wanted to create a sense of movement, almost like somebody's rushing to the stage, like the band's going on, the drummer's just having a drink at the bar, and it's call time basically, and he's gonna rush off to the stage, sort of a thing, drumsticks in hand, holding that beer. I mean, we've us musicians, we've experienced that situation so many times.
Oh yeah,
and so the way I thought I could sort of depict, the movement was by just creating this sort of movement in the jacket, and because I don't actually own industrial wind machines, I kind of thought I'll just attach his jacket to some fishing line, and then I attached the fishing line to a light stand, and then in fact that worked really well. It gave me like flexibility, because I could move the light stand back and forth, and so create more or less tension in the fishing line, and so I could increase or decrease the amount of flappiness in the jacket. So it.
Any advancement on the word flappiness? Yes.
I flap, you flap, he flaps.
Everybody flap, flap.
Let's all get flapped. Anyway, so it was pretty straightforward.
Let's talk about the bottle, man.
Right. Okay. Okay. So the bottle. So the bottle is actually a Grolsch bottle, and I found this sort of in the run up to this shoot. Obviously, I was looking at different beer bottles. And I wanted to find something that I liked predominantly, and I found this Grolsch bottle, and I liked it for two reasons. First of all, the shape was kind of cool. It's a little bit different. Yeah. It has this I don't know what you call it. The flip opening thing.
Yeah. It's like the stopper.
Yeah. It's like you flip it open basically, which is kind of cool.
It's got the old. Rubber rings on it that you use to keep your guitar strap on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I still do, incidentally. And so the bottle, I liked the bottle. The only problem with the bottle was that it had so as part of the there's a huge Grolsch logo on the side of the bottle that's kind of part of the glass, if you know what I mean. So it's molded, into that. So that needed to disappear clearly. And the other thing is that the Grolsch logo is actually red, and so the rubber rings are red as well. But because this is predominantly a blues album, what the artist, who also was the art director, if you want, wanted to do is really to change all of that into blue and actually change the brand of the beer to blue, since all the songs are blues tunes, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a relatively easy thing to do. In Photoshop. The reason I mention that is because on the back cover there's a very simple image of the bottle on its own, and the reason for that is because on the back cover usually you have a lot of text. You have the track listing, and you have all sorts of other additional information. and you need to have a lot of negative space for all of that text to fit. So again, here art direction is really critical, and of course, when you're conducting a shoot like this, it's really important to know all of that and to clarify all of that beforehand, because you might as well shoot things the way they are going to be used on the album later, rather than having to fuff around. And so any good beer bottle, I think, that I've ever seen, any photo of or advertising image or something of a beer bottle that I've ever seen has, looks like it's come straight out of the freezer, basically. So you have a lot of condensation on the outside, and little bits of condensation running down and stuff like that. So it's really quite important to kind of give it that fresh, straight out of the fridge look. And of course, as you can possibly imagine, I mean, for those of you who have done some product photography before, you'll probably know this, but if you haven't, it isn't real condensation, because obviously if you did grab a bottle straight out of the fridge, straight out of the freezer, and you set it up, by the time you come around actually shooting it, by the time it's lit and everything else, that condensation is gone. Yeah. So a really good way to fix that is to use equal parts of water and glycerin. So glycerin is the kind of, you can get it at a bakery supply store or at a supermarket in the bakery aisle. You mix it with water, put in a spray bottle, spray on, pops your uncle. And it's great. I mean,
and Robert is your father's brother.
Oh, yes, of course. And so I mean, it works really well. It's kind of sticky, but it sets. And so, you prep the bottle beforehand, and then you can shoot that to your heart's content for hours. It won't change.
How did you apply it to the bottle?
You just put it in a little spray bottle.
You spray it.
So I just have a little spray bottle, which used to be, I don't know. You can get little spray bottles.
Yeah.
Used to have like perfume in or whatever it was. Just spray on. It's really super easy process. You can play around a little bit with distances, and you can create different size sort of bubbles on it and stuff like that. But if you're not happy, you can just wash it off. It washes off with water. So it's
nice.
No big deal.
Really nice.
Yeah, and it just creates that that sense of freshness. And that was from a technical point of view. That was pretty much it.
Was this a single light setup?
Yeah, so the lighting in this was by design really simple. So the idea was really to create that almost like semi-dark jazz club atmosphere a little bit, and so I just used one single softbox. It was, I think, the smallest softbox I have. And it really, it's very close to the subject. And what happens there is you get some quick light fall off. So again, we mentioned the inverse square law earlier. So basically, if you place your light source really, really close to your subject, then the immediate fall off is actually relatively quick. So that's the idea. So if you look at the hand, for example, you can see the front of the hand is lit and the front of the bottle is lit. But as soon as we get to the back of the hand or the sleeve of the jacket, that's already pretty much in darkness. And of course, what that means also from a posing perspective is that you've got to pose your subject in a way that you get the torso in, and the torso's lit, and you basically everything else, like the drumsticks and the bottle in the hand, have to be very much on the same plane as the torso. And although it doesn't really look like that in the image, that's really just clever positioning of all these things. If you had seen him holding that bottle and holding drumsticks in real life, it would have looked totally unnatural.
Right.
Because we don't hold things close to the body. But of course, if you think about what's happening in the photograph always is we're taking the three-dimensional world and we're compressing it into 2 dimensions. And so really here it's just an illusion that the hand with the bottle is much further in front of the body when it's really not. So, but that's really got to do with making sure that the light hits exactly what you want it to hit and all the rest of it. So it's you very often have to just adjust things like that, and then really just look through the viewfinder and actually see whether what you're seeing through the viewfinder corresponds with the idea that you have in your head. And
where was that softbox? Where did you position that light? I'm guessing it's difficult to tell for sure, but I'm guessing it's just off to left of camera, maybe head height, just maybe slightly higher, angled down towards the body.
Yeah, pretty much. Really simple. Exactly. Very simple setup. It was slightly feathered, obviously, but it's actually, in fact, I remember it was feathered quite a bit. Okay. So really, what we're just getting here is at the edge of the light. So by and large, the softbox, the light, it was shooting past the actual subject, so it wasn't really angled in a 45 and 45. It was feathered a lot more than that. But again, it just allows you to really create, that sort of three-dimensionality. And I like these contrasty fall-offs. It's just something that I dig, especially on dark backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although, you can't really see much of the background here because obviously we're really just seeing the torso. But that was the idea.
Do you recall what focal length you were at for this? The reason I ask is I'm just interested as to whether that affected how you were talking about how close the hands, the bottle and the drumsticks needed to be to the body to make it look right. I'm just interested to know how the focal length affected where you position those.
Yeah,
if at all.
Typically, yeah, absolutely. When you're working with very specific depth of field, then yes, that would be an issue. I think, to be honest, I was probably at about f8 in this one. Okay. So no, nothing particularly shallow or anything.
Yeah.
But the consideration as far as the posing was concerned is predominantly down to the lighting. Mm-hmm. So this is a lighting decision rather than. I didn't really want to have a lot of fall off as far as depth of field is concerned.
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be more interesting to actually let the light do that rather than going down the shallow depth of field route where you have. But then it gets really quite complicated because nevertheless, if you think about it, if you're holding a bottle in front of you, from your knuckles all the way, back to your shoulder, and he's also angled a little bit, so really it's like the whole width of the shoulder. That's at the distance that you are from the subject. That's quite a lot of depth of field that you need to cover there. Still. So if you go in with something like, I don't know, 3.5 or 2.8 or something like that, forget about it. That's not really going to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I actually can't remember which focal length I used. No idea. Maybe either the 50 or the 85. That'd be my go-to.
Cool, man.
Probably 85 actually on this.
And obviously, we touched on editing, changing the color of the rubber stopper on the top from red to blue, which has even been caught in the reflection in the bottle as well, which is awesome. What was there any other editing that you really, really did in this, or is this pretty much as is, if you know what I mean?
Well, there's a little bit of post-production on this. The color change is probably the biggest, part of it. Although, again, in Photoshop, if you're working with the hue saturation layer and a mask, you can literally do that in under 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Because the way Photoshop works, especially the hue saturation method works, is you have two sliders. You pick the color you want to change. And then you have another slider that basically determines what your target color is. So let's say you want to change red. So you basically, use red. You pick red, and then you move that to blue, and then all the reds change to blue. Very simple.
Yeah.
And then of course it will do that to any red in the image. And so all you could do then is actually just use a mask to limit that change to whichever bit of the photograph you want to actually change. If that makes sense. So again, it's not a terribly difficult method. I think we talked about this in the past. I'm pretty sure we've made a video about this in the past as well at some point. But
what I done?
So So that part was easy. Other than that, there's a little bit of frequency separation going on the shirt, and that's really just to soften some of the creases in the shirt.
Yeah.
So the idea here was not really to get rid of any of the creases or make it like super smooth, because that doesn't really look realistic at all. But because of the way different fabrics react to light, sometimes you just have to smoothen things out just a little bit, and so that's really what's been going on here. And in fact, the big creases in it I've accentuated through dodging and burning later on. So it was really just a matter of just smoothing out some of the smaller creases, and then really just going in and giving it some shape with some dodging and burning. I think that's that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. Just out of interest, was this the crop in camera, or has this been? Did you shoot ever so slightly wider to begin with? Just curious.
So I mean, if obviously it's the end image is square.
Yeah,
because it's an album cover. So of course it was shot slightly wider. It was actually shot landscape, but basically,
of course it's square. Yeah.
But basically, as far as the top and the bottom of the shot is concerned, that's pretty much as is. I think there isn't much cropping going on at all. The idea was always to hone in on the torso and basically just, get maybe a hint of neck, depending on where the color of the shirt was going to be, or maybe even a little bit of the lower part of the chin. So that was always the idea, and then to basically bring it down to about where the belt would be. And then just to really and have the hands do, because remember it's called Hold My Beer, so it's all about holding, which is hands, and then of course about beer, and that was. Anyway, that's the thing. And of course, the fact that there are drumsticks in it is Mark Herdman is a drummer, and it's his trio. So we had to get the drum reference in there, somehow.
Gotcha.
I tell you what was actually what I really liked about the back of the album cover, though. I mean, the shot where it's only the beer bottle. I wanted to basically make that bottle glow a little bit, so I lit it with a snoot. And a speed light, in fact, from the back. So that was an interesting thing, because it was really trying to get the angle right, and then trying to aim it right so that it would just illuminate the right part of the bottle. And I didn't really want the bottle to I didn't want like a light explosion going on there.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hit the bottle in a way that it just gives it a little bit of a glow and a little bit of three-dimensionality in it. And that was that's probably part of that, and using the fishing line on the jacket, and using the glycerin on the bottle. Those are my favorite parts of this.
Love it.
I just like fiddling around with stuff like that,
I feel food photography coming on.
Well, I don't know. I mean, beverage photography is, it's interesting. I mean, it's just interesting. I don't know.
I'll happily do that if I can drink them afterwards.
For someone like me who really, I mainly photograph people, predominantly. So as a portrait photographer, I actually really enjoy photographing things, but I like to put a human into the scenario, or I like to almost like enhance the subject with some objects, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so I do enjoy photographing objects. I just, I don't really enjoy that. And I really don't enjoy shooting them on their own that much. I mean, certainly not if I had to do that all the time.
Yeah, of course. It's awesome, man. This makes me want to do some product photography and give that a bit of a go.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different and it's a different pace. That's the thing for me. We've talked about this, in the past. When we spoke with Skylar Bird, for example. Doing the food photography and stuff. It's a slower pace, and it requires a lot of patience, and it's very different. from working with humans, when you have a human in front of you.
Yeah.
Because the pace is different. Like I did a headshot session with, a CEO the other day, and that was completely different pace. I mean, it's frantic as hell because you didn't have a lot of time. There were multiple locations within the building that we were in. And it was literally, racing around because there was a hard stop, because she had a meeting that she had to get to, and there was no flexibility. She just wanted this location, that location, and another location.
Yeah.
And you just have to make it work, and you don't really have that much time to think.
Yeah.
You just have to get on with it and do it. So it's, it's very, very different from shooting, a product or something. Or like the Lego thing that we talked about earlier. I have like the biggest respect to that because the whole thing, what intrigued me about the story basically was that the whole image creation takes 2 days. 1 day of building the set and setting everything up and testing the lights and doing all of that stuff, which I love doing. And then another day of shooting the final image. So there are upsides to the whole product photography thing.
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. But it definitely makes me want to give it a go when I find a little bit of time. Maybe in the new year, I'm going to set myself a few little personal projects like that. Just have fun and learn some new skills. There's nothing more fun than learning a new skill. So I think that might be my January or February coming up. Definitely.
Oh, okay, cool. Wow,
I feel some more competitions coming on.
Well, yeah, we have some competitions in the pipeline. Anyway, so that's that is we've got we do. It's an incredibly busy couple of months at the moment. So once we're past that, then I think it's competition time.
Oh yeah. But that was fun going through those couple of photos today. I hope that it gives everyone a little bit of insight and as to how we made those, and more than anything, gives people some ideas of things that they can go and try, that they may not have tried before. And like I say, learning a new skill is, well, there's nothing more fun, and you'll go and apply that to something else, right?
And it's the best way of practicing and getting better is by basically, taking something and, in fact, recreating something like when we were talking about your shot earlier, you said, you've seen this, this style of imagery, and then you decide to recreate it. And that's really, I think it's a great way of learning is by definitely. Sort of, backwards engineering an image. And I do that all the time, and I've always done that. Actually, in fact, whether that's photography or music or whatever it is, you listen to something, you kind of go, how is that done? And the same thing, like we do this all the time when we watch movies, we'd look at a scene, like a camera move, and we'd be like, how did they do that? And then we start working, okay, I'm pretty sure they had a crane here, and I'm pretty sure I did this, and this is probably CGI and blah, blah, So it's backwards engineering is an important part. And then also just experimentation, if you see an image that you like, and it could be of a bottle, or it could be a portrait, or it could be whatever it is. And you just go, well, I wonder how they've done that. And with some, rational thought, you can probably deduce quite a large percentage of how something is done. And then the rest of it is just experimentation.
Yeah.
You try something, doesn't work. Try something else, doesn't work. You try something, works halfway, and you go, what did I do different to get that result?
That's it. Exactly that. And you'll start combining things that you've done in 3 different projects, and you never know what you're going to come up with. You never know. Exactly.
And again, I think the best example that we've ever had, and that we ever talked about to do with this on the show in the past has been, car photography, where basically, we at some point realized that, really good car photography is basically landscape photography with a car in it. And when you start thinking about it like this, then your perspective changes completely because the initial focus is not the car, it's actually the location. Mm-hmm. So you start, because let's say when, you get an opportunity to photograph a really cool car, like a Ferrari, for example, like we have done, it's very easy to fall into a trap and thinking like, oh, we've got a Ferrari. I mean, that's going to look good anywhere. Let's just go and shoot that Ferrari. When really the thought process, you're better off basically thinking, well, okay, do I know of a location that would really suit that car? Mm-hmm. And then, the better you get at, your landscape photography or your like, city photography or whatever it may be, street photography, then, putting the car in that is actually not that hard.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So again, you combine different skills, which is why it's so important to just try out different things. Even if you've never shot products before, it might be a good way.
Think of it this way: if any of you out there play guitar, play piano, whatever it might be, what did you learn first? You learned how to play covers, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
I dare anyone to say that they didn't. It's no way.
Here's the thing, though. I'll tell you a funny story. So when I first started playing the guitar, my dad brought home an electric guitar, I remember, and he had a book that came with it. And one of the first things in the book was Smoke on the Water. But it was played over 3 strings. And so I sort of taught myself how to play that across 3 strings, weirdly. Mm-hmm. And once I learned how to do that, I knew an A chord. Okay. And then the next chord I learned was something like E minor. And then I had a little notebook and I started writing songs, in inverted commas songs. And it would literally be like, song 1, A, E minor, repeat. And then I would learn a D chord, and then it'd be like, song number 2, D, A minor, A, E minor or something. And then song number 3 would be just a different combination of the same chords. Mm-hmm. And I'd make up little kind of riffs, based on the few chords that I knew. And then eventually, it got more complicated, obviously. But yeah, when you can be creative, right from the get-go, I think.
Yeah, totally. But that's why you learn covers against someone else's stuff, because they've been through all the learning phase, learn something they do, and then and try and understand why they are like they are. But in the early days, you don't do that. You just learn how to play it. But then over time, it builds and builds and builds. Your knowledge base builds, and you start taking all those influences to make your own. Yeah,
exactly.
Song.
I mean, only the other day, I learned a cover tune, and I was learning the riff, and as I'm learning, I'm like, he's doing what? Learned a new thing. Excellent.
Yeah, exactly. Even after how many years of playing guitar?
I know the whole
50?
3 years that I've been playing guitar. No, I haven't. Way too many years.
Awesome.
But yeah. So I hope you enjoyed our little, I don't know, a photo critique episode today, where we're looking forward to doing that on a regular basis. That'd be quite fun. We're also going to be introducing a new segment to the show entitled "What is Dave Up to Now?" But more about that next week. Anyway, we have come to the end of this week's episode 83. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, remember, if you are listening to the audio version of this podcast, remember that you can hop over to YouTube, where you can see our lovely faces in full Technicolor. And seeing that we've been talking about lots of photographs today, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, just go ahead, whilst you're there, hit the bell, click a like, follow the channel, because that's important so people can find us. And if you insist on listening to the audio version, Tommy in the car, then, give us a little review, give us a little star rating. That would make all the difference.
But not while you're driving.
Clearly not whilst you're driving, Tommy. Anyway, that being said, that's episode 83. We'll see you again next week.
See you later.